How is everyone doing today? In this video, I'm going to be going over some tips for new real estate investors that are just starting to get into it. And in this video, it's going to be mainly based from the perspective of starting out with a house hack opportunity for investing. I am going into my 6th year as a property investor, which is pretty surprising. My first property was way back in 2019, and now we're just coming into 2025, which is just crazy to actually think about because I still feel super young. And I started with a house hack, which is where you buy a small multifamily property. Typically, it's 2 to 4 units. You live in one unit and rent out the remaining units. And you're using it as your primary residence, so you can get a low down payment loan on it. And of course, as your primary residence, you will be living in it, but with that rent coming in, you'll be able to cover some, if not all, of your mortgage payment while still living at the property. So I'm going to be going over 5 quick tips just to keep in mind if you're beginning to look at real estate investing, and maybe you're young like I was, because I bought my first property at 19 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just doing research like this on the internet or reading books and listening to podcasts. So I'm going to dive into those 5 right now. Welcome to my channel. My name is Shane Moynihan. I'm a real estate agent and investor based out of Keene, New Hampshire. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, just feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Or just go right down below in the description and there's a link that you can schedule a consultation with me. A quick 30 minutes, we can get on a call through Zoom and just see kind of what's up and see how I can help you get to your goals. So most people always put the best tip last, but this one I'm going to put first. And it's understanding that real estate is a long-term investment, especially when you're doing it like this, buying a property that you're going to use to rent out and eventually one day create cash flow in return. Because a lot of times you'll see on social media all these real estate investors that are really doing like fix and flip properties, or they're doing some kind of backdoor sketchy ways of going about owner financing, even though there's mortgages in place, which isn't necessarily the best way because you can get caught. And with fix and flips, it's almost like you're kind of getting a job because you either need a lot of money to be able to buy the property and renovate it and take on those costs, or you need really good connections with people you know who have a lot of money that can lend you the money, but you're essentially getting yourself a job and you're hoping that the market doesn't turn while you're doing all your repairs. You hope you don't go over budget and you hope you don't lose money. So this one is really a long-term investment because you're buying it as an investment property. And especially when you're starting with house hacking, it's going to be longer term because again, you're using it as your primary residence. So you're probably not going to see cash flow right when you buy it because, well, you're taking up one of the rental units that would create that cash flow. So really what the benefit is when you first buy it is that you're starting to collect rent and you're going to be able to put that towards your mortgage, which will hopefully cover most, if not all, of your mortgage. And then you'll be able to live for free or close to free, which is typically always way cheaper than rent or what your actual mortgage payment is without that rental income coming in. So that'll actually allow you to save more money because, well, you're not spending as much on housing. You'll be able to reap the tax benefits, and while you're living there, you're paying down the mortgage. So everything's really good on that side. And when you're looking at house hacking opportunities, you want to run the numbers in 2 different ways. The first way is what's it going to look like when you're actually living at the property and living in one of the units, because again, you're taking up the rental space. So how much money are you actually going to pay towards the expenses of the property? Because there are some more expenses than just the mortgage. The mortgage should have your taxes and insurance included, but there's also things like heating, electric, water and sewer, plowing, yard care, all that stuff. So you want to know what you're kind of dealing with. And then you also want to run the numbers the second way of, hey, what's this building look when it's fully rented? Does it actually make sense? Is it going to cash flow? Because you don't want to run the numbers show that it's a negative $200 even when it's fully rented. That's not a good investment. Then you're just losing money and it's no fun. You want something that's going to return on it. And if it shows a return, well, then it should be a good investment. The next tip I want to touch on is that the right tenant matters more than keeping up with the market rents, to an extent. So what I mean by this is if you have a really good tenant and maybe they're a little bit below market rent, but you don't really want to charge them more, it's not like a lot of people say every year you should do a increase to keep up with inflation and keep up with the market. And I agree to that to an extent. But if the tenant is super good and they take really nice care of your property, they don't have any complaints, they're really have no headaches for you to deal with, is really trying to push for that extra $50 or $100 a month really that smart? If you're going to push that tenant out, then create a vacancy where you have to take a month to find a new tenant, fill that vacancy, and hope that tenant's as good as the last one was? I don't really think it is. So really 2 out of my 3 rented units right now are a little bit below market rent, but I just know that they're good tenants and I like to have them here, so I keep them at that rent. And one of them, if they move out, I have to renovate the whole unit. So do I really want to try pushing for higher rent? No, because guess what? If they move out, well, then I have to spend a lot of money to put in to actually update the unit and get it ready for the next tenant, because it's not going to rent as well when it's in this condition. So you have to kind of play both sides of the fence and see what works for you. But again, having a great tenant, try to do everything you can to keep them in place, because it takes away from having to fill vacancies. Because even if you're really good at filling vacancies, typically you're still going to go a month without rent. So you just have to take that into the scheme of things and see if it actually makes sense. The next one I want to touch on is kind of along the same lines, and it's do not rent to friends or family. And you'll probably hear this a lot, and a lot of people kind of take it in one ear, right out the other, because they end up doing it anyways and then have a really bad experience. I was one of those people. Luckily, I only rented a bedroom to one of my friends, but it went south really, really, really fast, and he owed me a lot of money really quickly, and I wasn't charging him that much money per month. So it's definitely one of those situations where, not like, especially in that situation, the money wasn't necessarily the biggest problem, but it's like, the friendship got all fucked up because, well, guess what? When you're coming home every day, seeing that friend, and they know they owe you money, you know they owe you money, it just becomes awkward and it becomes really weird, especially when they invite you out to go to bars and stuff, and you're like, hey, why are you spending this much money on drinks when you still owe me this much money? So it just becomes really skewed. Luckily, I haven't rented to any family, but that would be the same situation. And I'm not saying every one of your friends and family is going to take advantage of you. There's good people. Most people aren't going to do it, but in case that situation happens, you don't want to be that bad family member or bad friend that's all cares about money, because tenants and property owners kind of view things differently. Sometimes I feel like people just look at money differently, and they're like, hey, you already own the house. What's the big deal if I owe you some money? Where it's like they almost take an arrogance of it, even though you're doing a favor and renting them a place, but they don't feel like they need to pay. So it's just, don't even try going down that road if you don't need to. I highly recommend do not go down that road, because I did and it didn't work well. The next one is always have reserves on hand. So when you're buying a property, well, guess what? You're also buying something that's going to need maintenance, going to need repairs. Things are going to go wrong. It's a house. Things happen to houses, especially when people live in other units that you don't really know and they're just doing things weirdly. Things are going to come up, and you want to have money on hand, because one thing I always say is, as a landlord, if the unit isn't something I would live in personally, I don't want to be renting it out. And that goes to the extent of the things that run the unit, like the furnace, the hot water heater, all these actual big important things that provide the heat, provide the water. You want to make sure those are working properly for your tenants, or they're going to get really mad, as they should, because guess what? They're renting a property. They should have heat in the property. So if a furnace goes out on you and you have an $8,000 bill because you need to put a new furnace in, well, what are you going to do there? Are you going into credit card debt? Are you putting it off and then making your tenants mad? You really have to figure that out, and you should have cash reserves on hand for those big expenses, because you don't want to go down and start getting into credit card debt because you didn't set yourself up correctly in this whole situation of buying an investment property. You're an investor. You got to understand that you're coming with those responsibilities. You're basically your own business owner. You have to run the property the right way, get things done as quickly as possible. When things happen, get on it. It's your job. Last tip number 5 I want to touch on is learn to work on repairs and some of the maintenance yourself, because you're going to be able to save easy money. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's not worth my time learning how to do this. Okay, if you're making $500,000 a year and your time's that important, then yes, pay someone to do it. But if you're just working a regular 9-to-5 job or whatever your case is, and you're not making a ton of money, you're trying to do this investment thing to set yourself up in the future, well, guess what? If you learn how to bleed your own furnace instead of calling the company out to charge you $150 to unscrew a little plug until some oil comes out so the air bleeds, and then you turn it back, well, guess what? You just spent $150 on a 4.5-minute job that you could have done if you looked on YouTube. Or I've had issues with dryers that break. Guess what? I don't want to have some appliance technician come out, charge me $200 to repair a $50 dryer I bought off Facebook Marketplace. I'll figure it out. I'll tear it apart. I'll rebuild a whole dryer. I just did that the other day. It's not that hard. It only took me 30 minutes to do. People overreact to these little things. You'll always hear, especially on podcasts, oh, you shouldn't be mowing your own property's lawn. If you have that many properties and it makes sense to pay people to do it, pay people to do it, of course, save your time. But if you're a small investor just starting out, you don't really want to listen to all those people that are having 50, 100 units and compare it to you with 2, 3, or 4 units, because it just doesn't compare as much. For me to drive 4 minutes up the road to my other property and mow the lawn for the 15 minutes it takes, okay, that took me 25 minutes to do. Do I really want to pay someone $35, $40 every 2 weeks to mow the lawn? Or do I just go over there, spend 20 minutes and cut it myself? It's just these little things that you have to realize, hey, I'm going to save some money doing this. And it's also pretty useful to learn something so you know how to do it in case of an emergency. I had someone, they ran their oil tank dry. They got the thing out, but they never actually told the technician that they ran out. So they're like, well, we filled the tank, but the furnace isn't turned on. Well, yeah, because it never got bled. So I had to go over there at Friday night at 9:30 at night and bleed it. It's just the things that happen, and it's not like it's a huge deal, but learning how to do it will save you some money. And again, unless your time is super duper value, some of these things you really should be doing on your own. And I said that was the last tip, but I do want to throw in a little bonus tip here. And that is something I kind of struggled with, and it's don't let others dictate how fast you want to move with investment properties and how much you want to grow. Because if you listen to a lot of real estate investing podcasts or watch some real estate investors on YouTube, you always see these people that are going as big as possible, as quickly as possible, finding 10 different partners to go in on a deal with 50 units, doing X, Y, and Z so that they can say, I'm an investor with 1,000 units, even though they own 2 outright and the rest are with 400 different partners. Okay, but what if that's not what you want to do? For me, that's not what I want to do. I want to slowly acquire rental properties. My goal was I wanted 10 units before 30. I'm still shooting for that goal. I thought it was going to go a lot quicker when I started at 19. It's taken me 6 years to get 2 properties. Not necessarily 6 years. I bought one in 2019, then one in 2022. But after that, I've been in a little bit of a lull right now because guess what? I switched from a W-2 job to a sales job. So then I kind of had to restart the whole 2 years of pay stubs because they look at self-employment way differently than they look at W-2 because it's not as promised of income. So you have to really move at your own pace and don't let others kind of dictate what you're going to do, because even if you buy one duplex, live in it, rent out the bottom, save up some money, and then in a year or two, you go and buy a single family house, rent that out, and that's your only investment property. Guess what? You're probably ahead of 95% of Americans because you own 2 houses. So don't think that just because you get into investing, you have to go as big as possible. Run numbers, see what works for you. For me, I have certain numbers I want to hit, and 10 units is where I want to get to before I reevaluate and see, do I want to keep growing or do I want to start paying off? Understand what's going to work for you and just realize it's what you want to do. Don't let others kind of pressure you into going bigger and bigger, because some people love partnerships. Me, I haven't found someone that I would want to partner with yet. And I just think right now I'm still trying to get my footing as myself before I go and figure out other partnerships. So I hope this video provided a little bit of value to you, because becoming a real estate investor can be, well, it's not can be, it is super intimidating. You're becoming, especially if you're young, like I was 19. My first tenant was like 60. It's weird going to introduce yourself as a 19-year-old person and be like, hey, I'm your new landlord. When are you going to give me rent? All that stuff's just a little bit weird with the age gap. So with that said, I just hope this provided a little bit of value, give you a little bit of footing. If you have any questions, drop them down below in the comments. I have some other videos around investment properties if you want to check those out too. And make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll catch you guys next week with another video.